Austin, David, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
You are my first co-founders on the show where I get to actually interview both. We've had a lot of co-founders and usually I don't get the pleasure of getting to talk and get both sides. So I'm pretty excited about this conversation. Seems like both of you have interesting backgrounds that led you to being able to build out the California Beach Company. Before we jump in and start to understand your story and get a little bit more about how you guys work together, can you just give us a quick rundown on what is the California Beach Company and how you guys found it?
Yeah, I'll kick it off for you. So we make the world's best kids playpen. It's called the Pop and Go Playpen. That was kind of the main hit product that we launched with back in 2017, and we started with a Kickstarter campaign actually. And both of us are parents, young kids. Our boys mine is 7 now, Days is 5. At the time, they were much younger. And we had been through all kinds of different kids products, from strollers, car seats, playpens, all that kind of stuff. So we weren't necessarily looking to start a baby product business or a playpen business, but we had kind of had those bugs planted, those seeds planted in our minds of, what products were out there that worked, what didn't work, what was good, what sucked. And at the time, we were both working on a different venture. We had a outdoor beach products e-commerce venture that we were trying to run at the time. It wasn't profitable. It wasn't doing very well, but we were kind of sticking it out and going through the learning process of starting up an e-com business. And we went out to China one year, and we were visiting the Canton Fair, which is if your listeners have never heard of that, it's the world's largest import-export show. It's a massive trade show. It has literally every product in the world. The manufacturers are there and they're pitching their products. They're pitching new products, all that kind of stuff. So it's really, really cool. You can go out there and just get a ton of ideas, meet a ton of people. And we had actually ventured out there to try and work on our other company. And what we came across was a manufacturer who was making these really, really cool outdoor tents, like camping tents and that kind of stuff. And he had this design for this device that you kind of just pick it up and just pop it into place in one motion, and this whole tent thing just flies open, no assembly required. And it was kind of that light bulb, aha moment for us. We realized that if we could create a really cool like kids playpen that was like this, that we could market as affordable, portable, easy setup, easy takedown. We knew we would crush it. So did
you guys both agree right off the bat when you saw that pop-up thing to do it? Yeah. You're like, no, wait, dude, that's crazy. No, wait, this is why it could work. And then it was kind of an iterative process of just kind of going back and forth, or both of you guys like, oh, brilliant, we're moving towards this.
It's pretty evident. I mean, if you've seen the videos of the product, or even just a GIF of how it works, it's one of those things where if you're a parent and you have a baby or a young child and you see this playpen and you see somebody literally set it up in 1 second, you go, oh shit, I need that. Like I've needed that and I didn't even know I needed that.
So I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I just remember every time that my wife or ex-wife would try to get me to put something together, I'm like, dude, I don't know how to open this thing. And even with the strollers, you're like in the back of the car, jamming it open, trying to figure it out. So, and the same thing with the playpens. I never was able to figure it out.
Same. I hate assembling products. My wife loves it. She's like an IKEA master. I hate putting things together. And
I'm ready to start paying IKEA to put them together now at this point. I wish that happened when I was buying all IKEA stuff.
Right.
That was the worst, putting that stuff together.
Totally. So yeah, so we, me and Dave had launched a previous Kickstarter with our other business. So we had a little bit of experience.
Yeah, talk me through the Kickstarter piece. So, many people might not be familiar with how it actually works. They might have heard of it, but they actually don't know when to go there, how to go there, when does it make sense? Can you just talk a little bit about how you chose that route?
Yeah, sure. Kickstarter is one of those things where it's very, very deceiving. A lot of people will look at Kickstarter campaigns and number one, think it's easy and you could just make a product and make a video and throw it up there and you're going to raise a ton of money. Or number two, that it's going to be profitable. And both of those things are largely myths. Kickstarter is amazing for getting your initial momentum out there, for getting brand exposure or product exposure. But it's very, very difficult to do. And there's this very strategic playbook that needs to be followed for it to work. I'm one of those people who's like just an avid researcher. Like I read everything I possibly can. I study stuff before I do it. So I really dove into that before we launched Kickstarter. Dave did as well. And we realized that we needed to partner up with a firm that literally specializes in that one thing and making Kickstarter campaigns successful. We knew we had a good product. We knew people would like it.
There's companies out there that literally will just help you figure out how to do a Kickstarter campaign.
Yep. So the one we used was called Funded Today. Their website is funded.today. And they've raised, I think they're close to $500 million now for companies on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. But that's all they do. They'll take on your project. They'll run some test ads on things like Facebook. They'll do some lead gen stuff, that kind of stuff, to see if there's enough interest for it to work. And then if they take on your product, they're the ones who put in the ad spend. They're the ones who drive all the traffic and all the business. And then they take a chunk of your campaign. So that's kind of where I was leading to my next point, which was, the profitability piece, because, if you do it on your own, yeah, sure, you keep all the money, but you may raise $5,000. You may raise nothing. If you partner with one of these guys, you may raise $300K, $500K, but they're going to take all your profit. So you walk away and people are like, oh, you guys are rich. You just made $500,000 in a month. And, little do they know you're not rich. You haven't made a penny yet. But you do have great exposure at that point. And if you use it correctly in your marketing, that's kind of where I think we look in hindsight. I think we did a really, really good job, almost without even knowing it. We immediately pivoted and turned our marketing to, the Pop and Go is the Kickstarter smash hit. And we ran with that for like the first year. And it really just helped kind of take the business off.
But let's talk about the things that we, that didn't work well, which was logistics. That's something, the only mistake we really made was we did it internationally and we sold to 61 different countries. That sounds amazing, but when we had to ship to those countries, it was a bad idea. And that's something that I wish we never did, because it literally took us almost a year just to get caught up on all the fulfillment. We ended up losing a lot of money because of that. So we learned a lesson with that one.
Try shipping a playpen from China to Saudi Arabia and let me know how much it cost.
That was the only nightmare for sure.
So in hindsight, would you have looked at a different fundraising campaign, knowing what you know right now, or found money elsewhere?
We probably, honestly, not speaking for Austin, but I probably would never do a Kickstarter campaign or a crowdfunding campaign ever again, to be honest with you.
That's a tough
what's
one
the
for
reason
me.
for that, Dave?
I'm sorry?
What's the reason for that, Dave?
It ended up being, it was too much for what it was worth. I think that, I think we benefited by getting our product out there, the name out there. We did get we started a pulse for the company. That was really good. But again, it was an absolute nightmare at the end. And we really didn't make a dime off of it. If anything, we lost money. So I think that now where Austin and I are in our careers, we don't need to do that anymore. We know how to test the market. We know how to launch products. We know how to do many things. But again, I'm not trying to take everything away from Kickstarter, and I'm sure some young guys like ourselves, it'd be beneficial. But again, I guess my main thing advice for me would be to just do domestic only. Don't do international. Unless you have a very small product and it's very cheap.
To clarify what Dave's saying, I don't think we would do another Kickstarter campaign at this stage in our career, but I don't want to discourage startups or new entrepreneurs from crowdfunding, because it's certainly a good source to get your business out there and exposure and get some capital going. If done correctly, you can make some money, but definitely don't go into a Kickstarter campaign thinking you're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in your first month, because it's extremely rare for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you guys pivot? So at that point, you made probably a strategic move going internationally, where it just ate all your margins up and probably cost money. You didn't want to screw up the brand, so you still delivered, but it was coming out of your pocket to do so. And along with that, you raised the money with a way that kind of ate into all your profits. And then, so it could have been very discouraging of that part to be able to do it. You saw some momentum, I'm assuming, in the sales, and people wanted it. You got great feedback on it. but it would have been easy to go decide to pivot to somewhere else, like you guys did when you first went to that trade show. What made you realize that this was the right business, the right product to continue to go now that you're looking back 6 years later?
I think just the initial response. That's another benefit to doing something like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, where you put your product out there almost as a test in the market, and you get real feedback from real customers all over the place to know if your product will sell or not at the price point that you're wanting to sell it at. And I think that kind of market research or almost like a survey, if you will, in real time with real customers is invaluable. It's very hard to get that information otherwise.
Yeah.
So how else can you launch a product and see if people are going to buy it without actually launching it and seeing if people are going to buy it? So it gives you that advantage. And the fact that, we ran this campaign for a month and raised $500,000 and sold, thousands of products to 60 different countries all over the world. Even if logistically we did it wrong in the beginning, we knew there was something there. So that really gave us the motivation to just keep pushing.
Right.
Was the product already made and you just found it at the trade show, or was it you kind of combined a couple products and asked them to build it and kind of created something new?
It was a combination of both. He had a similar version. We worked with him on kind of some iterations and some updates and that kind of stuff to kind of tweak it and make it how we wanted to. And then we came up with the brand, we came up with the name, we did all the trademarking and all that kind of stuff. And then that's how we launched it as the Pop and Go.
So talk me through a little bit about how you guys became partners. Because I think, everybody kind of want to work with a friend and they want somebody else to do it with, makes it feel better. But then it also is riddled with a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to do that, you guys have seemed how to manage it, not only with other businesses, but this business for a length of time. Can you just talk a little bit about how that started?
Yeah, for sure. So I've known Dave, over 20 years now, right?
Yeah, 20 plus years.
Yeah,
we're
together.
We were roommates, and you name it. I mean, we lived in LA for 20 years and we had some other roommates at times, but really it was Austin and I that really hung in there and stayed in LA the whole time. And we were both kind of running our both operations. Austin was running gyms, I was running restaurants. We both were leaders with what we did. And, we just kept going back and forth. And at some point we were like, Austin, we got to do something, we got to create a business. We can't keep running other people's business. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure Austin could add on, but that's really kind of how it started.
Yeah, we both had similar mindsets. We were semi-successful in our careers. Dave was opening multiple restaurants. I was opening gyms. We were both kind of building an empire for somebody else. And, I think it really, really kind of hit home when you have a kid, when you settle down or you get married, that's when it's kind of like, you want that time freedom. And, when it comes to having a successful business, there's the financial freedom and there's the time freedom. And in my opinion, the time freedom is even more valuable. You can be financially free, you can make a ton of money, but if you're a slave and you're working 15 hours a day, what's it all for? You can't really enjoy it. And I think that's where we were. We were both making okay money, but we were slaves to somebody else. And we both had that mindset of, we know what we're doing enough to at least give this a try and see if we can do something on our own. And we both just work very well together. I'm very focused on the financial side of the business, the marketing side of the business. Dave's very operationally focused, customer service focused. So it was just a good kind of yin and yang partnership, and it just worked out.
I want to spend time talking about that in a second, but you mentioned that you didn't want to build an empire or build for someone else, and that's still not a normal mindset. Most people don't even catch that they're doing that for people. And I think LA was interesting when I moved. So I grew up in the Northeast, in Philly and Boston. And Philly and Boston is a lot of career type people, successful entrepreneurs, but you can go build a W-2 type employee job real well, and that's kind of like the normal route. When I got to LA, I was surprised about the entrepreneurial nature there, and it kind of breeds people to want to be either independent contractors or entrepreneurs. And I love that you guys were successful on your own, probably making money on that side, but still realized you wanted to pivot to that. And it's a hard pivot to do it, especially as a partnership. And you talked about kind of how you divvied the roles. Did that evolve through that? Or as you guys started the business, you were like, you know what, I'm going to do this side, you do this side. Here's how I think it's going to work. Can you just talk a little bit about how you started to find those strengths, considering you guys really weren't working together until you started the business?
I think it was more trial and error than anything. Neither one of us have an MBA. We didn't go to Ivy League schools to learn business. So, we didn't really come into this with a framework like you get coming out of, a Stanford MBA program where, you need to have someone doing this for operations, this for service, this for marketing, this for finance, all of these things. And so in the beginning, it was both of us doing everything. It was really just us trying to keep up. We were both wearing every hat, trying to do everything we could to make the business work. And, we just communicated a lot. So anytime there's a fire, anytime there's something going on, it's, hey, you want to handle this one? Cool. I got this one. Let me handle this. And eventually I think we both through that trial and error, just kind of learned what each other were good at. And, now to this day, I mean, we almost don't even need to say it anymore. It's just like when something comes in, an email comes in and it's, operationally focused or it has to do with supply chain management. I know Dave's on it. If something's coming in from the accounting team, he knows I'm on it, so it's kind of evolved over time that way, but I feel like we're really lucky in that sense that we both just kind of naturally took our own paths that were parallel with each other.
Yeah, we're lucky because, I mean, we both agree on almost everything. There's really nothing that we disagree on. And if we do, we just talk to each other about it and, state each other's points and really think it through. And we're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then we go with whatever direction we decide on. So yeah, we're really lucky. And, we learned, I tried something a long time ago with some other people and I learned quickly how, working with certain friends just normally does not work at all. A lot of people say they're going to do something, they don't do it. You even try to give them tasks and they just don't get it done. So yeah, I mean, it's been a blessing that, Austin and I work so well together and we've known each other for forever. So
yeah,
it's really worked out.
What advice would you guys give to people that are thinking about partnering up with a friend or even and somebody else that you would learn, that you learned?
That's funny. That's exactly what I was just about to say. I think it's super important, when starting up a venture with anybody that's a friend, anybody that's a family member, that kind of stuff, is really making sure that your agreements are in line and cover every possible scenario up front. Talk about, hey, what happens if we disagree on the direction of the company? What happens if, the company runs out of money and we got to put more in and you can't, and I'm the only one with money? Talk about all of these issues and hire a consultant, hire a good lawyer, get somebody involved that can talk you through these issues, because you don't know what you don't know. Things are going to come up. And if you haven't hashed that out in the beginning, that's where a lot of people run into trouble. And next thing you know, you're ruining a friendship or ruining, even family has been destroyed over businesses. And a lot of times I think that can be avoided if it's at least talked about and discussed and agreed upon up front. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah. And, everybody needs to be held to, the standards and expectations that you both set out for. Sweat equity at the beginning is super important. Everybody needs to know that, we're all sacrificing. We're working for free. Austin and I didn't pay ourselves a dime for almost 5 years. Nothing. We both were working our other jobs while we were, building this on the side. We both understood that, and we both knew that we had to invest. We had to put our money in. I mean, I know Austin and I, we invested almost everything we have to make this work. And but we knew we had something, and we knew that we were all in at this point. But yeah, that would be my advice: is just know that you got to put in the work and the effort. Don't expect things to just happen.
How did you deal with issues as they popped up? How did you guys keep the communication good when, you're spending all your money, you're working your tail off another job, you're burning the midnight oil on this, and, inevitably one of you guys are going to screw up on something and one of you are going to have to be patient with the other, or, didn't have time. How did you make sure you communicated and didn't let that continue to fester? Or how did you at least be understanding when there might have been a little frustration, or that never happened? You guys just lucked out.
No, we've made mistakes, but we both know that we're human, and we talk about it and we fess up and we say, yeah, man, I screwed that up. And Austin's not, he's like, all right, let's get it done. Let's fix it. Let's do whatever. And vice versa. We just, we know that even though that we've already made it to a certain point now, we still know we have a ton more to learn. We're going to be forever students, and we're forever learning. There's so many different things that are going to pop up. So you just got to work together to make it work and fix it. Whatever goes wrong, you just got to dig in. That's it.
Yeah, communication is really the key. It's one of those things. It works the same in a partnership, in a business relationship, in a marriage. If you have little things that bug you, not talking about that, not bringing that up is how it starts, and that festers over time, and it builds on that, and eventually you get to the point where that annoys you about the other person and it wasn't addressed, and now you have this kind of what's the word, almost like a roadblock in between you that you can't get over because of something that you never even talked about. That
it builds up as resentment, and then all of a sudden you resent the person.
Yeah, it's just building. So we don't have that. We both, Austin knows if I get frustrated, I'll say it. Same thing for him. If he gets frustrated with something, we just let it out. And we're both adults, and we just handle it.
So you mentioned in your comments just a little bit earlier how this was, and I hate the term, but it was a side hustle for you guys on it, meaning you guys are working other jobs while you were trying to build this. Can you talk a little bit about what that time was like? And, you guys started out young family, you got kids, you got pressure, and it's, you're working your tail off in another job. And then all of a sudden you're taking time away from your kids to be able to build this. Just talk me through a little bit about that time for you guys.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think one piece of advice I could give, for the younger listeners, if you have a lot of young aspiring entrepreneurs that are in their 20s, that see all of this, what seems to be overnight success on Instagram and all these other places. My advice would be, take your time, get a job, try and find a job in an industry that you love, that you appreciate, and learn as much as you can there from other people. And doing that, I think really, really will help you in your career when you want to become an entrepreneur and launch your own business, more so than anything else. The job I was in the fitness business, I learned how to sell. I learned marketing. I learned, even the financial side of the business, how to read a balance sheet and a P&L, all that kind of stuff that had I not learned from that would have been a disaster had I just tried to start my own, from scratch. Dave's same thing. Dave and his in the restaurant industry, hospitality. I mean, that's customer service 101 right there. If you don't learn that and you go into a business and try and launch your own company, it's going to be a lot more painful. So the fact that we were both kind of in our own careers, learning business from someone else while generating income, and then having the side hustle on the side, I think made it easier in hindsight, versus trying to start too soon without having that knowledge up front.
Yeah, and just to kind of go back, it wasn't easy by any means. I literally for I want to say 2 or 3 years. I mean, it was really tough. I just had a kid not too long ago. I was working, my full-time jobs, operating multiple locations, and we were starting to take off. So, I mean, I gave up, my mental and physical health. I feel like I sacrificed that to get where I'm at today, and it's 1,000% worth it. It wasn't easy. I would work all day, busting my tail, and go home at night and responding to customers and doing whatever I needed to do to get it done. But really, it was the vision that we had, the passion behind it, and just dreaming big. We knew that we had something, and we had goals, so we weren't going to give up until we made it. And we saw a big uphill battle, but there was definitely light at the end of it. So we finally made it over that hill, luckily, but it took some time and a lot of hard work.
Who helped you guys navigate through it? Was it mentors? Was it reading books? Was it just talking to other people that were, running businesses like yours and just picking random people's brain, kind of besides you guys actually, rolling up your sleeves and doing the work, who helped influence you to at least make some right decisions or at least bounce ideas off?
For me, it's, goes back to the kind of the self-education piece. I have been an avid reader of everything from the Wall Street Journal to Harvard Business Review to Entrepreneur Magazine. I mean, for as long as I can remember. I got heavily into podcasts. I don't know, I forget how long, maybe 5-6 years ago, something like that. And I loved listening to this is why I like this podcast here that you're doing, because it reminds me of two of my favorites. One is called How I Built This. It's by Guy Raz with NPR. Awesome. Really cool podcast, and he talks to founders about kind of like what we're doing here, how they built their company, what mistakes they learned, and just listening to this kind of stuff and hearing other people's stories and what they did right, what they did wrong. It really resonates. And if you do that enough, you get enough knowledge to where if you actually just implement some of it, it's really going to help you in whatever you're doing. So again, I think it really goes back to that self-education piece. If you're constantly striving to learn more, better yourself, and learn from others who have already done it, you'll greatly improve your chances of success.
Yeah, I think mine, just going back, when I was, raised by my parents, my parents had a cleaning company, and my mom also had a private investigation company. I was kind of born around, entrepreneurs, I guess you could say. But there was definitely some ups and downs. My parents split. I went with my mom. We had some hard times. And, I think from there, obviously I didn't want to ever go through those hard times. I didn't ever want to see my mom go through that again. So I was motivated from a young age to have extremely high expectations myself and high goals and big dreams. So, I always expected myself to be able to take it to another level. So I don't know if it was that or just, I was just driven to not settle. And, the same thing, I think I was just going crazy. I spent a lot of time in the hospitality, and, again, going back to not having that freedom, time or financial freedom. I used to have to work all the holidays. I would miss all of Austin's, parties on the weekends. It was just tough. I had to sacrifice a lot, but that was some of the things that drove me to get to where I'm at today. So a lot of it was, my parents and just self-motivation.
Now he's in Florida and he still misses my parties.
Well, we did just hit Miami.
You chose like Naples, where basically it's mostly retirees.
And, yeah. I'm okay with that.
The up and coming tech scene. Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we hit Miami recently and partied a little bit.
Well, I live 30 minutes from Miami, so I'm down there a decent amount. But I have offices in Fort Myers and Naples, so I'm over your way.
Oh man! Oh, there you go.
So talk to me about a favorite failure you had. Now it could be with, it could be with your existing business, California Beach Company, or it could be with one of your other startups, or it could be, some other part. But a favorite failure you feel that had an impact, whether it's a funny story or whether it's just something that was impactful. I know people don't like to say I never failed, or I don't look at it as a failure or learning, blah blah blah. I get all that, but take it for what it's worth. That question.
Yeah, I mean, failure is one of those things. Like you got to look at it. You got to change your paradigm, your perspective, and look at failure as a good thing, as opposed to a bad thing. People are afraid of failure. They're afraid to try things because they may fail. But that's where you learn the most. You learn by trying and failing. And if you're paying attention to what's working and what's not in your life and what's going on around you, again, that's going to help your chances of success as you keep plugging along and moving forward. When I think about our biggest failures, I think about our first e-commerce business, our first products. It was a product called Beach Sheets. And ultimately, we were trying to build a company around this product. And we came up with it. We designed it. We had other partners throughout the years. It was a cool concept. But we could never make the economics of the business work. We could never get the right margins. We could never get profitability. Even though people loved it, and at times we sold a ton of them, we never really made money. And we just held on to this business for so long because we were trying to tell ourselves in our mind that it's gonna work. It has to work. We love the product. Other people love the product. It has to work. And we never really took a step back and looked at the business as a whole and realized that with the current margins, with the current, market price, or what the market is telling us the price should be for this product, with the current, marketing, with all of these different, economics of the business, it's just not going to work ever. And so, again, I look at that as a failure, but at the same time, I look at that as a success because we learned all of those lessons. And then ultimately, when we pivoted and launched a new company and a new product, we were able to take those lessons and apply those to this to make sure we didn't make the same mistakes. And that just proved invaluable. I think if we hadn't had that, I don't know if this business would have been as big of a success as it is today.
I think it's an important lesson to take out, right? So a lot of people, if you put too much time in something, you start to fall in love with it too much, and you have this embedded cost in your head that you got to make out, than opposed to making an objective decision that it's time to pull out. In hindsight and looking back, was there indicators you sort of saw earlier to say, you know what, I should have thrown this in a couple of years, but I was just too committed to the actual product and idea than opposed to the true fundamentals of the business associated with it?
Hard to say. I mean, had we thrown in the towel, I don't know if we'd be where we are today.
Yeah.
We kept plugging.
Funny how successful people spin it all the time to make it into something like that. You're just gonna make it seem like it got you there. It's a better psyche to have it that way, right?
Right. But I do agree with Austin. I feel like if we would have thrown in the towel, we wouldn't have taken the steps that we did to go out to China, and try to source, material, and, meeting the manufacturers, and then basically, finding products and changing and having that communication with them to be able to change products and learn that whole process. We probably wouldn't have been there, but yeah, I mean, our other product was a huge failure, but we give it a ton of credit because it really took us to where we're at today, even though it was, again, it was a huge failure. So I am very
thankful. At that point, you guys were open to a pivot, right? You were, and financially, you probably were kind of forced to be open to a pivot, but you were open to a pivot at that side to be able to look for other opportunities where some people might have stayed even more committed to that. And you went to solve that, right? When you saw that pop up, it wouldn't have been noticeable for you.
I think that's one of the most difficult questions for any entrepreneur to answer is how do you know when to pivot, or just keep going, right? Because chances are when you launch whatever it is you're launching, even if it's a service or it's a SaaS business or it's a retail product, whatever it is, chances are you are not going to make money right out of the gate. And for most companies and most businesses, that period of not making money can extend out year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. How long did Amazon go without making money? 10 years or more, right? So, you got to look at that and you got to understand, when it's time to throw in the towel or pivot and when it's time to keep going. And that's a really difficult question to answer. I think it's more case by case basis. And you really got to listen to your customers, what your customers are telling you, what the market is telling you. And again, it goes back to asking the right questions, talking to mentors, talking to people who have done it before and that are smarter than you versus always trying to figure everything out on your own. That's probably the best way to find those answers in your journey.
Yeah, it almost comes to the art side of the business, right? It's not like you could just go run a CBA and know you have the assumptions right and know to make a decision, because you're going to kind of convince yourself of certain things. You mentioned some of the things that are an important piece though, and this is where mentors come in. People that have had the experience, they can pull away your emotions you might have to that and look at it objectively and kind of paint a picture for you so you can start to think about it in a different way. Because if it's just you two talking, you're going to convince yourselves of some things that might not be appropriate because you guys are so invested in. Last question for you. So what was the most memorable day of your career? And now this could be with your existing business. It could be with previous businesses. It doesn't have to be super impactful. It could be a funny story, whatever it is, but your most memorable day of your career. And Dave, why don't we start out with you?
Yeah, I think there was There's two. I think the day that I was able to resign from my previous job, that was huge. I mean, that was just a huge relief. And it was unbelievable, the feeling that I had. And I was scared. I was scared because we're way past that. But even then it was like, okay, we're still, there's still so many risks and chances that you have to take. But I took the jump, and yeah, that was huge. And then I think the next one, say again?
I forced him to do it.
Yeah, well, Austin definitely was like, dude, it's time. Dude, it's time. And I was still so scared. He was like, it's time. Write it up, send it. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. So I was just like, all right, man, I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
That's funny because when I was an executive for a Fortune 500 company, and I was about to start my own business, and I was resigning. And my wife at the time, I was super scared to do it. So I wrote the resignation letter, but I wouldn't hit the enter button to send it. I had to make her come and send it because I was too scared to be able to do it, because I was kind of burning the bridges after 15 years.
It really is, man. It really is. When you got a lot of pressure on you, having a child, having a wife that, doesn't work. And I had my mother-in-law and my mother living with me, I believe, at the same time. So it was tough. But another one I think is the first time that we hit $1 million in a month.
Oh, that was mine.
We're doing better than that now. But that was the one where, like, I can't believe we just did $1 million a month, when I think we were back in the day when we first started, we were like stoked with 150,000. I don't even know. We were just, but when we started hitting $1 million a month, was like, okay.
That was what I was going to say. That was for me. I don't think I'll ever forget that moment. We had never seen on Shopify when it changed from a K to an M.
Yes.
When we saw the M for the first time, we all just lost it.
We were just fist pumping, fist pumping.
There's an M. And so
that was amazing.
Afterwards, after that month, I actually had a special plaque made up for our CMO that said, first time $1 million in a month, California Beach Company. And now we have weeks where we do $1 million, but that moment will stick, I think forever, is one of the most special.
So did you guys actually celebrate it all when you hit that, or was it just kind of celebrating with the team? Did you finally get to go to one of Austin's parties?
Well, we didn't actually. I think that was still like during COVID, right?
It was like early 2020, I think.
Yeah, it was early COVID. And no, we didn't get to celebrate. There's a lot of things that we missed due to that, even moving. I mean, we couldn't even have a going away party in LA. And that, I think I might have to go back just to have one, because I lived there for 20 years.
Finally opening up now, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I lived there for 20 years. I mean, I have a ton of friends there, and like basically that are family, and I didn't even get to really say, goodbye. So, yeah, no, unfortunately we did not, but we'll party soon.
I think you bring up an interesting point too, because I mean, when you're growing and scaling a business, you never really feel like you made it. Like, you never really feel like this is it, right? There's no destination; it's the journey. So even when you get to these points, these milestones, the celebration is very short-lived. It's kind of, oh my God, I can't believe we did this.
Oh, like, if you don't celebrate that day, by the next day you're worried about the next thing. What's
next?
Now we're worried about next month. So
what's next? Yeah,
I think it's important to kind of take time when you hit important milestones like that and step back and look at what you've accomplished and really kind of celebrate with the people that helped you get there.
So and this is the last question for you then. Getting in the product space where you're designing and building out products, let alone in the child space, any advice you would give? Because a lot of people are now going to software, and a lot of people are going to service businesses. So it's interesting, based on what you guys had from a retail chain that you had on the gym side or on the restaurant side, you guys sell baby products, right? So you moved into a space that you might have not been real familiar with. Any advice you would give to somebody moving into the product?
I got one. Make sure that your products are tested and certified before you go live.
Oh, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
For me, I think I would say research as much as you can about competitors, about the market size, about what customers are searching for. There's so many tools available now where you can really kind of understand your potential in a product, and we're learning a lot of that even just recently. As we look to additional product lines and additional products to launch, we're talking about things like, a beach tent, for example, and we may come up with a cool beach tent design, but there may be 10,000 people selling beach tents and nobody owns a significant chunk of market share, and profit margins are next to nothing. You don't know unless you do that research up front. And it can save you a lot of pain, a lot of headache, by finding something that, you can innovate in, or, you can differentiate yourself in that market. Why do you stand out? Why is your product different? Why is your brand different? And can you capture a meaningful, percentage of market share to really make it a success and make it worth it? You have that up front. I think it's going to save you a lot of hair loss.
Nice. Awesome, Dave. This was an awesome conversation. I think we hit a lot of tactical pieces, from fundraising the business, the good and the bad of each, to scaling the business and pivoting, to understanding different roles and the learnings from you guys as co-founding the business, to just some entrepreneurial learnings on when to start, when to walk away from the company. Very, very fun conversation. I appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for having us. That was a great conversation. Thanks.
Thank you for watching the Upreneur podcast, and don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and share this with anybody who you think needs to hear it.